The rain-slicked streets of Seattle gleamed under the streetlights, reflecting my fractured thoughts as I sat in the passenger seat of my wife's car. My name is Ethan Caldwell, 32, a graphic designer with a knack for overthinking, and tonight my world was about to unravel. Clara, my wife of 5 years, turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and said, "Lucas will take care of you tonight." Clara, 34, with her sharp wit and cascading auburn hair, had always been my anchor. We met in college, bonded over late-night coffee runs, and shared dreams of a creative life. But lately, her late nights at the law firm and my endless freelance deadlines had carved a quiet distance between us. Tonight, she was leaving for a conference in Portland, and her brother, Lucas, was supposed to keep me company. I assumed it meant pizza, beers, and maybe a few rounds of Mario Kart. I was wrong. Lucas Martinez, 35, was Clara's older brother, a freelance photographer with a reputation for charm and a life as untethered as the wind. He'd moved to Seattle a year ago, and while we'd always gotten along, there was something about his intense gaze that made me fidget. As Clara kissed my cheek and drove off, I felt a strange knot in my stomach, like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't name. Lucas arrived at our Capitol Hill apartment at 7 p.m., his camera bag slung over one shoulder, his dark eyes catching the dim light of the hallway. "Ready for a night out, Ethan?" he asked, his voice low and teasing. I laughed, assuming he meant a dive bar or a food truck crawl. Instead, he led me to his beat-up Jeep and drove us to a quiet park overlooking Puget Sound. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of pine and salt, and the city skyline shimmered in the distance. We sat on a bench, the silence between us heavy but not uncomfortable. Lucas pulled out a thermos of coffee and poured me a cup, his fingers brushing mine as he handed it over. "Clara said you've been stressed," he said, his tone soft but probing. "She thought you needed someone to talk to." I nodded, sipping the coffee, unsure why my heart was racing. I told him about my latest project, a branding campaign that was sucking the life out of me. He listened, really listened, his eyes locked on mine in a way that made me feel seen for the first time in months. Then he said something that stopped me cold. "Ethan, have you ever wondered if you're living the life you're meant to?" His question hung in the air, raw and unyielding. I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. Instead, I felt a rush of something unfamiliar. Fear, curiosity, desire, all tangled together. Lucas leaned closer, his breath warm against the chilly night air, and I realized this wasn't just a casual hangout. Clara's words echoed in my mind. "Lucas will take care of you." What did she mean? The park was quiet except for the distant hum of the city and the soft lapping of waves against the shore. Lucas's question lingered, a spark in the dark that I couldn't ignore. I deflected with a nervous laugh, muttering something about loving my life with Clara, but his gaze didn't waver. "I'm not asking about Clara," he said gently. "I'm asking about you." I shifted on the bench, my hands gripping the coffee cup like a lifeline. Lucas was different from anyone I'd ever known. Confident, unapologetically himself, with a quiet intensity that made me feel exposed. He was openly gay, something he'd shared with Clara's family years ago, and while I'd always admired his courage, I'd never thought much about what it meant for me, until now. He told me about his life, his travels through South America, the people he'd met, the stories he'd captured through his lens. Each word painted a picture of a man who lived without fear, who chased what set his soul on fire. "I used to hide who I was," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But one day, I realized the only person I was hurting was myself." My chest tightened. I'd always thought of myself as straight, married to Clara, content in the life we'd built. But as Lucas spoke, memories flickered. Moments I'd buried, like the time in college when I'd felt a pull toward my roommate, or the way I'd catch myself staring at men in passing, dismissing it as nothing. Lucas's presence was pulling those threads loose, and I wasn't sure I wanted him to stop. He reached out, his hand resting on mine, and I froze. "Ethan," he said, "you don't have to have all the answers tonight, but you deserve to ask the questions." His touch was electric, sending a jolt through me that I couldn't explain. I pulled my hand away, not because I wanted to, but because I was terrified of what staying meant. We drove back to the apartment in silence, the weight of the night pressing down on me. Lucas didn't push, didn't ask for more than I could give. But as he dropped me off, he said, "If you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm here." I nodded, my throat tight, and watched him drive away. That night, I lay in bed, Clara's side empty, my mind racing with questions I wasn't ready to answer. The next morning, I woke to a text from Clara. "Hope Lucas took good care of you. Miss you." Her words felt like a riddle, each one laced with a meaning I couldn't grasp. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button, but all I could think about was Lucas's hand on mine, his question about the life I was meant to live. I tried to focus on work, but my sketches were a mess, my mind replaying the previous night. By noon, I was pacing the apartment, restless and unsettled. I called Lucas, telling myself it was just to thank him for last night. He answered on the first ring, his voice warm and steady. "Want to grab lunch?" he asked, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. We met at a small cafe in Fremont, its walls lined with local art, the air thick with the scent of fresh bread. Lucas was already there, his camera on the table, his smile disarming. Over sandwiches and iced tea, we talked about everything and nothing. Music, movies, the way Seattle's rain made the world feel softer. But beneath the surface, there was a current, a pull I couldn't ignore. He showed me photos from his latest shoot, images of people raw and unguarded, their emotions laid bare. "I try to capture truth," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "The moment someone stops pretending." I swallowed hard, feeling like he was photographing me, seeing parts of me I'd never shown anyone. That afternoon, we walked along the waterfront, the conversation turning personal. I told him about my childhood in Ohio, the pressure to be the perfect son, the way I'd always followed the path laid out for me. He listened, his presence steady, and when I admitted I sometimes felt trapped, he didn't judge. Instead, he shared his own story, coming out to his conservative family, the years of rejection, the freedom he found in embracing who he was. By the time we reached a quiet pier, the sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Lucas stopped, turning to face me. "Ethan," he said, his voice soft but firm, "you're allowed to want more. You're allowed to want different." My heart pounded, and before I could stop myself, I reached for his hand. This time, I didn't pull away. The moment my hand touched Lucas's, the world seemed to pause. His fingers curled around mine, warm and sure, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. But guilt crashed over me like a wave, pulling me under. Clara, my wife, the woman who'd stood by me through every late-night panic attack, every failed pitch. What was I doing? I stepped back, my breath uneven. "I can't," I said, my voice breaking. Lucas's expression softened, no trace of anger or judgment. "I know," he said, "but you're already asking the questions, Ethan. That's the hardest part." He let go of my hand, but his eyes held mine, steady and unflinching. The rest of the week was a blur. Clara returned from her conference, her smile bright but distant. She asked about my night with Lucas, and I mumbled something vague, unable to meet her eyes. Every touch, every conversation with her felt like a betrayal, not because of what I'd done, but because of what I felt. Lucas's words echoed in my head. You deserve to ask the questions. I started meeting Lucas in secret, telling myself it was just coffee, just friendship. We'd sit in quiet bookstores or walk through Pike Place Market, the crowds giving us cover. Each time, I felt myself unraveling, the walls I'd built around my identity crumbling. Lucas never pushed, but his presence was a mirror, reflecting truths I'd spent years avoiding. One night, over drinks at a dimly lit bar, I told him everything. My confusion, my fear, the way I'd always felt different but never had the words for it. He listened, his hand resting on the table, close but not touching. You don't have to label it, he said. You just have to let yourself feel it. I wanted to reach for him, to close the distance, but the weight of my wedding ring stopped me. That night, I came home to find Clara waiting up, her eyes searching mine. Ethan, she said, her voice trembling. What's going on with you? I froze, the truth clawing at my throat. I wanted to tell her everything, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I said, I'm just lost. She nodded, her expression unreadable, and I wondered if she already knew. The next morning, Clara sat me down at our kitchen table, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I saw you with Lucas, she said, her voice steady but laced with pain. My stomach dropped. She'd seen us at the market, laughing, our shoulders brushing as we walked. I'm not angry, she continued, her eyes glistening. I've known for a while that you're not happy. Not really. I tried to protest, to tell her I loved her, but she held up a hand. Ethan, I love you enough to want you to be honest. With yourself, with me. I asked Lucas to spend time with you because I thought maybe he could help you see what I've seen for years. Her words hit like a punch. She'd known. She'd seen the parts of me I'd tried to hide, even from myself. We talked for hours, tears falling, hearts breaking. Clara wasn't offering me an out. She was offering me freedom. I want you to be whole, she said. Even if that means we're not together. I sobbed, not for the loss of our marriage, but for the love she was showing me, a love so selfless it hurt. In the weeks that followed, I moved out, staying with a friend while I sorted through the pieces of my life. Lucas was there, not as a lover, not yet, but as a guide, helping me navigate the fear and shame of coming out. I started therapy, began to untangle the threads of my identity. I wasn't just straight or gay or bi. I was Ethan, and for the first time that felt like enough. One evening, I met Lucas at the same park where it all began. The air was cool, the string lights glowing softly above us. I took his hand, my heart steady this time. I'm not ready for everything, I said, but I'm ready for this. He smiled, his eyes bright with hope, and we sat together, watching the city lights flicker across the water. Clara and I divorced quietly, our love transforming into a deep, bittersweet friendship. She found her own path, her strength inspiring me to keep going. Lucas and I took things slow, building something real, something honest. I didn't have all the answers, but I had the courage to ask the questions, and that was enough. In the end, I learned that love isn't about fitting into someone else's story. It's about writing your own, one truthful moment at a time.